everybody. Welcome back. This is episode 2 of Women Speaking Their Truth, Midlife Conversations. I'm Lana Jean Telles. Lana, my Substack is Worthy and Wild, and we're so excited that you're here. I also wanted to take a moment to say how grateful I am to the women joining me throughout this series. Erica, for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Maria was under the weather, so we're really sad she can't be here, but we're still going to have a great time. So the stories were originally shared in an article I wrote called Women Who Chose Truth in Midlife. And like I shared last time, the response really was incredible. I was really surprised at how, I guess I shouldn't be surprised at how clear, how deeply it resonated with midlife women. And so really the series grew from that. I was sitting there one night and got an idea. I'm like, why not, be brave and just ask these women if they'd be willing to come on here live with me so you could hear them and hear them in their own voices. So tonight's conversation is about breaking old patterns, the ones we've carried for years, sometimes without even realizing it, and what it looks like to begin choosing differently. So I think this is something so many of us are navigating in midlife, not just changing what we do, but really looking at how we've been living and asking if it still fits. And so I'm really grateful for Erica to join me tonight. So, and I feel bad that you're all here getting the spotlight on you, but I will chime in when I can. So it's actually connects a lot to what I've been thinking and writing about lately, how we often know something needs to shift, but the patterns we've lived in for so long can be really hard to step out of. So tonight is really about that space between awareness and change. So I want to start by having you introduce yourself, Erica, and share a little bit about your story. And I have about six questions for you, but I do want to just start off by you sharing a little bit about yourself and your story. And then if you could share what brought you to Substack too, because I really am interested and intrigued by why people come here. So I'll let you take it away.
Well, thank you, Lana. I'm so grateful to be here. So I am Erica Vole. I am a decision mentor and inner trust guide, and I tend to work with women who are in midlife, and I use human design as a tool to help them start to untangle a lot of the patterns that they have been stuck in. And so I've come to this because I realized that I was in so many jobs that I would love for the first 18 months, and then I would hate them. And I would stay too long because I was a librarian, and like the library world is pretty small. And I just could not figure out what I wanted to do because I had always done what I thought I should do. So I got a social work degree, and I was in social work for a while, and I did not enjoy it. So my parents were like, how about we do some aptitude testing? And I tested high in computers and math. And so I did a computer science degree, and I had several jobs there and did not enjoy them. And then I met my husband, and he was a librarian. And I thought, well, he loves his job. I should go become a librarian. So I went to library school. I loved school. I did not love my jobs. And that seems to be a pattern for me, is that I love the learning part, but I don't love the doing part. And so I was able to leave my library career of 19 years last year in May. And so I've been a full-time coach, and it has been the hardest thing I've ever done, except for parenting, but it's also been the absolute most fulfilling thing. And so what brought me to Substack is that I work with a woman named Julie Ciardi, and she's doing a lot on Substack right now. And she's like, you all need to be on Substack. You need to try it out. And I got onto it, and I've been here for 7 weeks, and I just can't believe the amount of people I have met, the networking, and I feel so supported because I had a website back in 2002, and that's how I actually met my husband. And because he found my website, and I had a blog, and I loved writing my blog. And then blog sort of went out of style, and Instagram was fine, but I didn't like who I felt like I had to be. Um, it felt so fake, and when I would talk in front of the camera, like I would get really self-conscious, and I'm like, but it wasn't perfect. It wasn't right. And Substack is so like, this is who I am. You get what you want. You get who I show up as, and like that's what you get. And I love it because I can write in a way that is, a lot of times I write my posts voice to text because that's how I tend to process so well. And so I'll write it, and then I will take it, the voice written one, and I'll use Claude to help me like format it. But I don't let it change the language. I just let it, put the period here that and there that needs to be there, the comma that
Right.
needs to be there. So, but it's just brought a side of me back out. I never thought I was a very good writer, but I'm finding that like this way of writing is really fulfilling, but it's also like I'm getting responses from people that I never expected. And people are like, I'm so touched by your story. I'm so, you know, I feel what you've experienced so deeply. And like I wrote an article about shiny object syndrome right after I got onto Substack, because I was like, oh no, is this my next shiny object? Because I get so distracted with something. And it's not been. And that's actually been my my highest article, is people are like, yes, I feel this shiny object syndrome too. And that actually shows up in my human design, is that like I love new adventures. And so this is my new adventure, but I just feel like this is a really good home for me.
Awesome. I know. I feel like that too. I really feel like Substack, there's grace here that I didn't feel on other platforms. And yeah, I really love it and the response. And I too, shiny object syndrome, very much so. But yeah, this is something that I have stuck to and enjoyed every minute of it. So yeah, that's awesome to hear that. So, okay, my first question: when did you first start to recognize a pattern in your life that no longer felt right? I know you touched on some things, but was it something sudden or something you slowly became aware of? Or I guess just what made you realize it wasn't just was it a situation, or was it really a
Mhm.
pattern? Um,
Yeah, it actually took my husband pointing something out to me, because I had always had a lot of negative self-talk. I was always extremely critical of myself, and he would say, "You have to stop the broken record." And I was like, "What do you mean? Like, how do I stop the broken record in my head?" And that was the first time I was really aware of these patterns I had. And as I've looked back on my life, I am a pattern maker. I was not a good pattern breaker. And so I would get into these jobs, and I would just be like in the same situation over and over. And I was like, why do I get a manager that feels threatened by me? Why do I always have coworkers who are always, saying you're stepping on my toes? Because I'm the kind of person that if I see that something needs to be done, I tend to step in and like do it instead of letting things fall apart. And that was when
right.
I started to realize like, oh, this is a pattern I have. And it wasn't until I looked back over my library career that I could see, oh, I didn't like my job after 18 months. I had the same type of manager in all of my jobs. I had the same type of coworkers. Had conflict with the same types of people. So it was, the broken record part was when I started to notice the pattern, but it wasn't until, maybe 2 years ago that I was like, and I was in my coach certification, and I was like, oh, this is a pattern for my entire life with jobs and relationships and all these sorts of things. So, I wish I could say it was me, but it took other people to help me see them.
And you being willing to listen to them, and being open to receiving that is huge, because we do tend to, like, especially people that we are close to, not listen. So that's volumes that you were able to do that. So, for question 2, again, you kind of talked about this, but what belief about yourself or your role in life um, was tied to that pattern? So, where do you think that belief came from? Did you question it right away, or did it take time? I mean, you did touch on it a little bit, but
Related to the jobs, I always thought that there was something wrong with me, that I was the problem, and that it was that I just couldn't find the right job. And that like there was the managers were why were strong women threatened by me as a strong woman? And I thought, okay, well, maybe they're just like I would always find something that was a reason that was wrong with them and not necessarily see it as of something, and then I would turn it into something wrong with me because I had a narcissistic manager and she was very abusive, and I was like, "Oh, well, maybe there is something that," what usually it ended up being was that there was something that they could see in me that I couldn't see in myself. And so there was something wrong with me that I wasn't seeing in myself. And so it would just turn into that broken record that my husband was always pointing out. And he was just like, "It's not you. It is not you." And I was like, "But what am I doing wrong? Why am I always in this situation?" So this belief that like I always thought I was the problem child a lot of times because there was just something that I was not. Why couldn't I fit in? And I was
right,
what I learned is I was always trying to fit. That's the key word, is I was always trying to fit in, but I never belonged because I was always in the wrong type of organization for me. And I'm such an independent person, and I have such an independent energy about me that like falling into line is not does not come naturally to me. Even though I was trying to fall into line, I was just like, oh, I'd always find something that needed to be fixed, and I would always have a suggestion, and they were like, "We don't want to hear your suggestions. Stop." So
right.
yeah, but that belief that there was something wrong with me and that it was always my fault.
So, what did it actually look like to begin choosing differently? Um, was it, I don't know, like a one moment or a series of small moments? Um, what felt hardest about doing something different?
I think it was making a very conscious being first of all, being very aware that it was happening. Um, as part of my coaching certification, we did a lot of personal development work on ourselves, dug into our shadows and like where we held people up on a pedestal, and then looked at what were things that we saw in them that we couldn't see in ourselves. That was really, really eye-opening for me to see that there are parts of me that I admire in other people, but I couldn't see them in myself. And so it was really a step of a process. Um, but so that was 2 years ago. But I think really where things started to come together for me, that there were these patterns happening, was when I burned out in 2022. My therapist was just like really pushing me hard, and not in a bad way, but in like the absolutely best way possible. She was like, "You are, this is not the right place for you." And I was like, "But I don't know what else to do." And what I turned into is I wanted her to fix things for me because I didn't want to do the hard work. And so when I went to my coaching certification year later, after doing a lot of healing from burnout and learning my human design and learning where the problems were and the shadows were, and the places that I had the patterns had shown up in my human design chart, and like learning how all that came together. And then when I went into the coaching program, that work just deepened, and so it was I feel like it was really a 3-year process from burnout. And it took me 2 years to like finally hit clinical
Right.
burnout stage. But then doing all of that work and then finally making a decision after a really bad day at work, and my husband was like, "You know what? I think it's time for you to leave the library. I can't keep doing this with you. I cannot have you calling me every day at work in tears. I think it's time to leave." And I was like, yeah, it had been time to leave for a while, but I just needed to, we needed to be on the same page there. And so a lot of, when I left the library in May, at the end of May last year, I went through a whole process of like unwinding and untangling a lot of these things that had
Mm-hmm.
been just so tight. And my my business energetics coach talks about like how there's a red ball and a blue ball of yarn. You know, our business is tied up with our energy, or we tend to tie it up, but like that's how the library felt for me. It was that like I had this red yarn and it was tangled up in my blue yarn, and it was just like, oh, I just needed to untangle all of it. And I think it took me, there are still things that come up, but I think it really took me 6 months before I felt like, okay, this is my job now. I'm a coach, and I don't like, I still talk to library people, but there are time, and it was triggering to talk to them, but there are things that now I can go out to, I can talk to them now, and I'm like, that's your job. That's not my job anymore. So
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would not say it was like one final day. It was like a whole process that took
Yeah.
probably 5 years.
Wow. You make a really good point when you were mentioning about therapy and how I think sometimes we do look to therapy to fix us, like instead of, and not realizing we have to do the work. It's like, you do it. That really struck me because yeah, I see that. Um, and then as you were talking, you I think you know, I feel like you know the questions I'm going to ask because you touch on them a little bit. But did anything pull you back towards the old patterns? I mean, I know it took you a long time,
Mhm.
but I feel like this for my own life, that pull constantly having to be hyper aware. But what, I guess, how do you navigate that?
Well, I can tell when I feel like I'm trying to prove my worth is when I really get back into those old patterns. Or I went through a period in February, and I I feel like we went through an eclipse cycle, and it started at the beginning of February and it went through until March 17th. And that was a lot of old things starting to show up for me again. A lot of
Mhm.
these old beliefs of I can't do this. Who do I think I am? I can't, you know, I thought I was this way and I'm not. And a lot of that old negative self-talk really started to come up, and I have told my husband, please don't use that broken record thing with me again. Like, that's fine, but like, I don't want. And what was happening is, was when he'd say, you know, you need to stop that broken record, is there was a lot of wanting to fix me. And so now I'm like, I don't need you to fix me. I just need you to listen to me. And he'll start to say something. I'm like, no, please. I don't want you to fix me. I don't want you to give me advice. I just want you to listen. And so
Right.
that has been really helpful. But at the same time, there are a lot of those old patterns that are so deeply ingrained in my system that when I'm really stressed and when I'm trying to prove that I'm worthy and that I'm trying to prove that I belong in this coaching industry, I don't really like to call it the coaching industry, but like belong with the people that I'm networking with and
Right.
belonging on Substack. Like I started on Substack right in the middle of all that turmoil. And I was like, well, maybe this will help me feel like I belong more. And so that was sort of my motivation, and that shiny object syndrome that came up for me. So, and then when I'm sick, usually when I go through that stressful period and then I get sick and I'm like, oh, see, I can't do this because if I could, I wouldn't be sick. And then like it all starts to roil and boil again. And the few days afterwards, it's like my whole house had the flu at the end of February. And so those first few days back, I was like, see, this is not right. And then there was something that just flipped. And it was like, oh, yes, I am here for a reason. I was called to this for a reason.
Right. That's awesome. So, what have you learned about yourself through breaking that? I mean, you have talked about this a little bit, but what have you learned about yourself through breaking that pattern?
Oh my gosh, I couldn't. I feel like it would take like 3 days to talk about what I've learned about myself. But what I've really learned about myself is that I didn't realize how much I was trying to prove my worth, and that it has been a pattern from very, very young. And learning human design, and that I have a center in my human design that's all about people who have that center open feel this need to prove their worth. It was like, oh, okay. So that's where I'm really aware of, like, where am I trying to prove that I am worthy? And that has been really, really big. And I have to say, like, my therapist is the one that told me to look up my human design chart. She's like, Erica, you are hitting the same walls. We are talking about the same thing over and over and over. She's like, I'm tired of it. She's like, we cannot keep talking about it. It's the same way.
Right.
And I was like, okay, and she said, just hear me out. I need you to go look up your human design type. And then next session, we'll talk about it. And I was like, okay. So I went and looked it up. I was working on the public service desk that night. It was a quiet night. And I started to read about, I looked at the chart and I was like, this is weird. This is crazy. Like, this is another system I'm going to have to learn, like astrology. That seems too complicated. But there was something calling me into it. And like, I read about what it was. And I literally started crying. And I'm sitting at the desk, and like, it was quiet. Nobody was there. But I'm like, how do I hold myself together to get home, and what if somebody walks by and it's like, why are you crying? So that has also helped me see a whole lot about myself and learn, like, where are the patterns that trip me up? Where are the fears that start to show up? Like this needing to prove my worth, the trying to figure things out. Where am I afraid of being rejected? Where am I afraid of feeling like I'm failing? So that has been really, really huge for me.
Yeah, I think human design is really fascinating. So what would you say to a woman who knows something needs to change but feels stuck in the same pattern?
That is what I work with women about all the time. Like, we untangle all these patterns. And so one of the first things we do together, and this is something that I've learned for myself, is that I need to dig back a little bit. Like, what is the story? First of all, what's the story I'm making up about this? What story am I telling myself about this? And then where is that story originating from? And so as people start to like do that exercise, what is the story I'm telling myself? What story am I making up? Because a lot of times the story we're telling ourselves and the story we're making up might be two different things. The story is, if I'm a failure and I never have good relationships, might be the story they're telling themselves. And the story they're making up is that, like, I'll never be in love with anybody again. But then when they start to dig in, it's like there might be a pattern and that showed up with their mom or their parents. And that's one of the things that I did a client panel recently, and like one of them's like, you helped me with my mama drama. And the other one was like, she helped me with my mama drama too. And like realized that all three of them had drama with their moms, and that a lot of their not feeling like they didn't fit in their family was related to how with their relationship with their moms. And so two of them, I had them go back and write their story, and where did these stories come from? And one of them wrote a letter to her mom, and the other one wrote like this really amazing story that she just really couldn't she said it was really hard, but she's like, I didn't realize that this story was something that I was holding on to so tightly.
Wow. That's really powerful. Okay. So one last question.
Mm-hmm.
What is one thing you know for sure in this season of life?
One thing I know for sure is that change is constant. I'm 52 years old and I think I'm going through perimenopause. I had a hysterectomy when I was 38, so I don't know. But change is really, really constant. I have a 12-year-old daughter, so like she's starting to go through puberty, and I have to learn to be okay with the changes that are happening, because I've noticed that the more I try to grasp on to, you know, I really want to read to her at night, or I really want her to be like the little girl that we used to hang out on the couch with together. Like,
Mm-hmm.
the more I grasp for that, the more she pushes me away and is like, "No, I don't want to be. No, don't do this to me, Mom. You're embarrassing me. Like nobody else is around, and I'm still
Right.
embarrassing her." And so that's one of the things that I've learned is like, especially in this season of life, is that like I just have to be along for this roller coaster ride, because I can stand. I can try for all I'm worth and dig my heels in, but it just makes it harder, and it just makes it more painful if I'm trying to dig in. And I think that that's what's happening in our world so much right now, is like people are digging in and they're like, "No, I am not changing. This is not going to change." And like, some things have to change. There are things, especially in, our government, that have been broken for a while, and
Right.
we need to let some things fall, but we also need to like I think we're in it's time where like really good feminine energy is going to come in. I mean, we've seen it happening
Yeah.
in Minnesota. Like moms are the ones who are doing a lot of the work. And
Yeah.
we know that in human design that like we're getting ready to move into a new era from the era of planning and the era of like structure and be like me, into more of an era of the individual, which is a lot more intuitive and a lot more soft and caring for each other in a way that's not like rigid and you have to be like us.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel like change is it's inevitable, and I feel like it's speeding up time right now.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I feel like it starts with us, right? Like being willing to change. I wrote this piece about we have to do this for our daughters. And I really feel that too. And I just am really grateful to you for being here. Is there any last thing that you want to bring up about, getting people over to your Substack, or anything you want to share before we
Yeah.
call it a night?
Yeah. You can find me on Substack. I think it's Erica V at Substack.com or Erica Vol at Substack.com. I don't remember which one it is. I taught a workshop on midlife and human design over there, and I'm doing some not private, paid workshops over there. So you can join my membership, and then you can get the paid workshops, and I have a report that goes along with the membership, and then there's also a private podcast that I'm going to be releasing. I work a lot with the seasons and the energies of the season, and I talk about the energies that we're going to be experiencing throughout the month, according to human design. So that's what I'm doing, and they can find me on Substack. I don't just talk about human design. I weave it into like life stories and life experiences, and then it's like,
Right.
and according to human design, we know this too. So
Yeah. Now, if anybody who isn't familiar with human design, check it out. Like it is really fascinating and mind blowing when you really sit down and dig into yourself. And yeah, it's great. So I'm really happy that you're doing that. I'm thinking I might have to join you at some point and really dig in more. But I do honestly thank you for doing this. This was new venture for me and having women on. So I really do appreciate you being a part of this. My hope with these conversations is that women listening start to recognize themselves in these stories and feel encouraged that change is possible, like you said, and even if it starts small. So thank you everyone who joined tonight. And I appreciate you, Erica, so much, and good luck to you. And I really, really have to say, I love the way you are embracing new people on Substack as well. I need to do more of that myself, and just encouraging other women to share their stories. So I really appreciate you. So thank you.
Thank you for bringing us all together. I watched last week's. It was great. And I love the article that you wrote about us. It was so great.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have an amazing night. And we'll see you Thursday for our episode 3. So thank you. Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.